Hello. Hello. Good morning. Today, ZBWeb welcomes you to the uh, Gene Wiki project from presented by ZBMed. So today, our talk will be by Andra Waagmeester. He is a biomedical computer scientist by training with a strong focus on the semantic web and fair data. He's part of the Gene Wiki project, which is a project that aims to leverage that aims to leverage Wikidata and Wikibase to make life sciences more accessible to people. Uh, Today, his session, he'll be presenting the Gene Wiki project in the introductory part of the session. We'll then continue with a more hands-on session where we invite the audience to join us in to search for an item in the Wikidata on a scholarly article using DOI, annotate the Wikidata item with metadata, for example, the main subject, disambiguates its authors, that is, resolves its author string to author, and explore that article using Scholia. So we'll be having a 20-minute talk followed by a question answer session for 10 minutes, which will be followed by around a 50-minute workshop, hands-on workshop. So I'll give the stage to Andra. And of course, you can use to ask questions, use the hashtag GeneWiki. You can use the Telegram channel. You can put in your questions on the YouTube chat. And also you can use the Etherpad to uh, there are links available for everything which will be done in the session in the etherpad, and if you want to put in any comments there, you're free to do that. So I'll put on Andra, and he'll take in charge from here.
Hi, all. Thank you for inviting me and letting and having a discussion about introduction on on Gene Wiki and how we can use Wikidata to leverage citations to scholarly articles as references in Wikidata items. This is a live session. It's being streamed on various streaming sessions. Like YouTube. If you want to ask a question, you can do so by through comments, and then I will try to respond on the comments. And during the hands-on session, where we will take Wikipedia articles, extract DOI references from that Wikipedia article and add it to Wikidata. And if anything goes wrong, use the comment, or you need further exploration, use the comment channels, the discussion channels to chat, to ask. So starting up with the Gene Wiki. Gene Wiki project is a project that started in 2008, and with then a focus on Wikipedia. The aim was at the time was to create a Wikipedia article for every human gene on the English Wikipedia. The Wikipedia article has the bot that was developed involved also adding structured data to a Wikipedia article in the info boxes on a Wikipedia page, where you would create links to external databases and summarize knowledge from crowdsourcing and having had references. So having all having a stub, which is what we saw in the previous slide, which has some starting information on a human gene, and the articles grew into full-fledged Wikipedia articles, which is nice because we can easily get that information. The problem or the issue with the Wikipedia articles that a human reader can easily grasp what is being expressed here. So if information comes if knowledge enters a Wikipedia article and someone else adds that information, adds additional knowledge to the Wikipedia article, that's interesting to know, but to assess and process that reading is necessary. But this doesn't scale. Humans can read it, but processing or asking subsequent questions. So here we have, for example, the expression of a protein. it links to schizophrenia. If you then want to extract other proteins, other relationships, etc., you have to go to all the Wikipedia articles that are out there. And the Wikipedia is also a language, multi-language community project. So there are more than 300 language Wikipedias, and the knowledge is different depending on where the information is coming from. Here I have an example of, for example, an info box that is extracted from the Dutch Wikipedia page. In it says the ICD-10 code is B50. On the Greek Wikipedia, it says it's also B50. But in the English, there are multiple references. So there are more handles in the English Wikipedia than there are in the Dutch and the Greek. There are other examples where it's the other way around, where Dutch Wikipedia or the Greek Wikipedia have more information which is not available in English. The same can be said for numbers. Here's the Wikipedia page of an island in the Caribbean, which is Aruba. On the Dutch Wikipedia, you see difference in numbers of the population size depending on where you look. So when in 2013 the Wikidata came up, the Gene Wiki project jumped on that opportunity, because instead of feeding life science knowledge to Wikipedia, we are now able to feed that information to Wikidata. And Wikidata is similar to Wikipedia in the sense that what Wikipedia is to text, Wikidata is to data. It is similar to Wikipedia in the sense that it's a collaborative edited knowledge base, and it's operated by the same Wikimedia Foundation that runs Wikidata. It runs on a completely free license, CC0. Anybody can contribute. It covers all domains of knowledge, extensive item history, like in a Wikipedia page, and it has a high-performance query engine, SPARQL, which allows for very complex queries. So like what I said in the previous example of a disease, linking a disease to a gene, now with SPARQL, we are able to indeed identify all genes that are, the multiple genes that are associated with the disease, or vice versa. It's a stable enterprise. A lot of research databases are dictated by funding cycles. When a fund ends or a scholar moves institute, often the project, a database ceases to exist. By using Wikidata, the knowledge is supported at a longer time. It's actively being developed, and it already has a large number of active users, editors, and contributors. So in 2014, the focus on enriching Wikipedia with with information on human genes moved to Wikidata. So we started developing bots to enrich Wikidata with knowledge on genes, but also on related concepts to genes, such as diseases, proteins, and citations to the articles describing those genes, and not unimportantly, chemical compounds that have an association with the gene. So what's the process? How do we get the process? What's the process of getting Wikidata in, getting a source into Wikidata? The first thing is community engagement. So if there is, for example, we want to, when we address, for example, human genes or mouse genes, we engage with the local, with a group of research community, and try to model the related data sources into a semantic model, which is on Wikidata. So here I have some some photos from a previous session where we try to model various databases into Wikidata. And what that happens in such a session is that the different data sources are assessed and then modeled into Wikidata. Once there is agreement on how that semantic model would look, that semantic model is formally described. So in the previous slide I showed here, let me get a pointer. Here is such a model on paper. So all these blocks are items. These are properties, and these are items again. So this is the end product of, you can argue that this is the end product of the initial step, is the community modeling of the information. But we need bots. We need bots to act upon. So we need to formalize that into a schema. So what this schema does is that we translate from this paper form to a machine readable form, schema. This allows us to check legacy review. So we have the model in place. Check what is already on Wikidata with respect to the topic under scrutiny. It allows us to document the schema that is being addressed by the bots. It allows us to check data before they are being submitted into Wikidata, and it allows us to check whether or not if after ingestion the data is still as expected. So here you see the Wikidata comes with an extension called an entity schema that allows capturing these schemas. And here I have a little example of one, which is E37 for human gene. And this is how such a schema looks. What we're seeing here is in the previous green, what was drawn as a node, an edge, and a node. So this is what it looks like. And once that is implemented, we can apply those so-called entity schemas, which use a language called shape expressions, to validate the information. So once we have agreed on this valid schema, we can then check what is in Wikidata with respect to human genes. And when that is in place, the next step of the process ends in where data that's not yet in Wikidata adds the information, is being added to Wikidata. This is where the schema is being used as inspiration. It used to write the bot in Python code, and then the bot will parse the primary sources that were discussed in the community modeling phase, and will then be transformed into the schema that has been agreed upon. The bot then transforms that primary data into a JSON format, or a format that is being sent to the Wikidata API and ingested into Wikidata. In the development phase, we use a gradual approach where, once the bot is ready, we run it on 2 to 5 well-controlled items. So to monitor how the new item is being ingested and how it whether it affects other parts of the Wikidata ecosystem. We then gradually increase the number of items being added, and once it is ready and for ingestion, it's being put into a production environment, which we are using Jenkins, which regularly runs bots to synchronize what is in Wikidata with the primary sources. So in the end, we have a system like this. And I've taken the disease ontology, which is one of the sources that are being monitored and synchronized with Wikidata by the Gene Wiki project. So there is the disease ontology, which has its own curation cycle. And there is Wikidata, which has its own curation cycle. And in between, there is this bot / community, Wikidata community, that pushes data to Wikidata, but also changes being pushed back to the disease ontology for future creation. So we have this constant feedback loop from the disease ontology to Wikidata. And currently we are at this. This is our current landscape. These are a set of concepts, which is we have genes, we have sequence genes, we have ribosomal RNA, pharmaceutical products, chemical compounds, biological processes, cellular component, protein, structural motif, etc. The blue boxes are results of collaborators in other research projects that are also feeding Wikidata, such as Civic, which does sequence variants, biological pathways, wiki pathways. But there are also independent projects, such as there is the WikiCite effort, where we leverage the scientific articles being put to Wikidata, as well as there are chemical hazards. So, by what I'm trying to say with this landscape is that by depositing the knowledge to Wikidata, the interaction with other initiatives starts happening. But maybe I should pause and see if there are some questions. Or we can do that during the Q&A. So far so good. And we are currently monitoring this. The Gene Wiki bots are running and are monitoring for updates in the primary sources. They're monitoring for updates in Wikidata. And there is a question. So what is inside the orange cube? So what is in the inside? That's a good question. So what I've seen, these are the types of objects, and these are the properties that are being identified. So we have the, for example, see if I can, no, I can't increase this, but here we have the gene. Then there is a property called HGNC's gene symbol. There is the ensemble transcript ID. There is the setFin gene ID. There is this genome database. So this is a set of identifiers specifically pointing to gene resources. For diseases, these are the properties in Wikidata and the number of properties that exist for that concept. So far so good, but now I'm trying to show here a SPARQL query, and that should return a list of all DOIs that are currently in Wikidata, and it times out. And it's a familiar screen for frequent users of Wikidata. SPARQL is a really easy to learn and awesome query language, but it allows for it times out when there is too much data. So as we have here the DOI, the Wikidata service comes with a timeout period of 1 minute. So if it takes more than 1 minute to compute the results, it times out. Or there are too many hatches or statements in Wikidata that also require more than 1 minute to process. So now, with more and more timeouts, sometimes we can argue that there is too much information in Wikidata on a specific topic. So how would you go in to address this issue? First of all, we can try to speed up the queries. If it's a complex query, try to split the complex query in multiple queries so that the response time is less than the supported 1 minute. But in the Wikidata anniversary of 2017, Wikibase as a Docker image was released. Before that, you could already install Wikibase. So the message is, if you run into timeout issues, you can install Wikibase on your own infrastructure, where you can increase the number of timeouts of the number of time that is required to update to give results of a SPARQL query. And there is a recent very interesting project going on called WB Stack, which works a bit like GitHub, you can deploy your own Wikibase there without having to rely on Docker or other system administration skills, and start hosting your own Wikibase. So to give, I'm running one of such Wikibases. There is the Wiki Project Biodiversity, which leverages crowdsourcing apps like iNaturalist to identify the surrounding around us. So here, this is a bit how it works. The app is used in the wild, so to speak, to observe animals, plants, all species around us, which is then submitted to the in this case the iNaturalist platform, which is also a community like Wikidata. This community then annotates the information that is being observed. So these users will get a message back: you have just seen tree X, you have just seen bird Y, or bug Z. And that is high quality information that can be fed into Wikidata. However, we didn't want to have all those observations, which is now running in the millions, into Wikidata, because that would outrun, it would be very it would just disrupt the system by its size. So instead of running, putting the data into Wikidata, I've set up a Wikibase where I'm ingesting the observations from iNaturalist, and based on that information, I can now write a query. And that Wikibase is linked with Wikidata. And then we can run a federated SPARQL query. And this part from underneath the surface, so from here to here, is a query that runs on Wikidata. This is the information that is on the local Wikibase, and it looks for observations. And what this query does, it checks on all the observations that have been made in a specific area, whether those observations are about a species that does not have a Wikipedia article yet, or vice versa, all the species that there is a Wikipedia article of. So in this case, the question was that we are interested in missing Wikipedia articles. So now, using this Wikibase, we are able to identify that these species lack, at the time of making this slide, lack a Wikipedia article or need some recoding in Wikidata. So to end, I think I still have 2 minutes. We are not trying to create the final solution. It is Wikidata is interesting for many reasons. It links to the greater semantic web, which allows us to explore that semantic web as well. So instead of trying to replicate everything into Wikidata from primary sources, we can leverage federated queries with the ability, that we have the ability to make one query across multiple stories. In my previous slide, I demonstrated a federated query between a Wikibase and Wikidata, but I have also examples, and I'm happy to share that, where a federated query runs against another SPARQL query, in this specific case, Wikipathways and Wikidata. So you have a Wikibase, you have Wikidata, and you have Wikipathways. Wikipathways doesn't run a Wikidata ecosystem yet. We can use those federated queries. So I want to end with this famous XKCD. The survey shows 16 competing databases. Let's make a universal database that meets everyone's needs. Show research, we have 17 competing differences. So then this I won't go into for time. I won't go in here, but this is another example of a federated query which runs against so we have the against Wikipathways. So we have a Wikidata query. We have the SPARQL endpoint of Wikipathways, and we get information that is not in. So certain, like the Wikidata drug and the Wikidata drug label, is captured in Wikidata. However, the metabolites and the Wikipathways identifiers is not, and yet we get those results. So we have interoperability. I want to end my talk with acknowledging all the ones here. We have a paper on. This is our latest paper on the overall project, which can be followed on here. These links will be put to Wikidata. Will be put on the Etherpad later, and you can explore these different papers. I see there is a question. Question from who is the target group of Gene Wiki? Do you know how much it is used? So yes and no. Yes, the target group of Gene Wiki is the Wikidata community, by extension, but also the research community, because it allows the research community to leverage other fields. So even in the research community, especially in the research community, we have different data sets and different knowledge bases where everyone uses their own schema. We invent our own, so to speak, columns in an Excel sheet. We define our own SQL schemas, and Wikidata presents a way to harmonize those models, so that if we talk about Gene, if X talks about Gene and Y talks about Gene, we can agree on using the Wikidata model to describe the relationships beta structured of behind the data information. With respect to how often it is used, yes, that's a very interesting question. We did start some preliminary analysis, I think 2 or 3 years back, but we're still looking for new ways, because the usage statistic is a bit, I think, are still bound by some licenses, so it's not easily accessible. Has there been a use case where Gene Wiki has contributed to a discovery life science platform? Yeah, I would say the example, but it's an open question. I would say if there are other use cases, please do share in the comments. But the example I give in my final site, WikiPathways, which is a prime example of a research project that leverages that information, that leverages Wikidata. So yes, there are use cases. There is also Civic, which is also leveraged, and the disease ontology leverages, but that's part of our own project. And if you know of other examples, please do share. The question is WikiPathways linked to other pathways databases? Yes, they are leveraging various databases, such as I know, but this is a question we need to ask the WikiPathways community itself. But I know they are leveraging Rectome and, if I'm not mistaken, CAC. Is there any organization outside the wiki world who uses shacks and you can communicate your requirements? I think it's a great concept, but miss showcases to inspire others. So personally, maybe I should tell a bit about how I got introduced to shape expressions. This was actually at a conference in 2016. So the shacks is an interesting format, because when you're dealing with Wikidata, we have the constraint violations, but the constraint violations act on the statement level. So at the time, I was really interested in a technique or a mechanism that allows to do graph analysis. So not only that it's a gene, but also that it's a gene that has a reference to source X, Y, Z. So I got introduced to this project in into shape expressions at that conference, and at the time it was FIRE. And I think, but please bear with me, I can try it in the chat. I think it's fire.org. No, I cannot. But if that's not a link, Google for FIRE, and at the time they're using, I see that then Brickley, is looking into shape expressions, and yeah, there is a Shax community group where not only use cases in Wikidata are being discussed, but any Wikidata, any shape expression use cases, anybody is welcome to join that community group, and which meets two times per month. Other questions? Where do you see the Gene Wiki project in 5 years? I would actually have the most I would hope to be general. How would you say that? That it will be an implicit part of Wikidata. So currently we run the bots. We develop a API language to interact between Python and it's called a Wikidata integrator. We maintain that, and that's a weak spot. So I hope in 5 years' time, the Gene Wiki project moved away from maintaining and developing the bots and discussing the underlying schemas. So we have still been building mostly the infrastructure, but I think we can say that it's more or less mature. There needs to be some minor improvements. So I hope that in 5 years' time, the Gene Wiki project is primarily actively adding data to Wikidata, discussing shape expressions, changing shape expressions. So basically, and that we don't talk about shape expressions anymore, but talk about data and schema. So that as a project, we will be using Wikidata to discuss data and underlying schemas. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Different life science fields. It's sometimes even not within. It's sometimes even within the same life science field. So even within the same life science field, there can be disagreement, not on the topic, but on the way things are being described. There is only one identifier to point to X. There is only this set of identifiers. So it's indeed an interesting question, is how do you deal with the different levels of detail and precision? I think we're at the start of having this discussion, of having a solution for this, but my gut feeling is that it is exactly where Wikibase comes in. So you have a high-level proxy on Wikidata, and then the moment that there are differences in discussion, we need to spin up a very biased setup for Wikibase that only covers that specific interpretation. We run into an interesting aspect of that in our collaboration with WikiPathways. So WikiPathways has a concept of inhibits. So now if we want to model that in Wikidata, we need to find a label for the word inhibits. But inhibits have different meanings in even within the English language. But if we start talking cross languages, you run into a lot of issues. So when we were modeling WikiPathways into Wikidata, to be able to run federated queries with a WikiPathways SPARQL endpoint, the decision was made to leave those interactions out of Wikidata, but only add in the identifiers. So the model of a pathway of WikiPathways in Wikidata consists of the name, the labels, the citations, and the individual parts. But once you touched on the interactions, that it's an inhibition, that it's an expression, etc. So you run into disambiguation issues. We leave that out of Wikidata and rely on in this case for Wiki Pathways, on Wiki Pathways itself, but in the end by extension. But we could also see this, and that's what I've been trying to do with the example I presented earlier, that we spin up a Wikibase and start populating that Wikibase from a sub-community to the Wikidata community, where Wikidata is the connecting hub between the different repositories.
Okay, that was a nice talk, Andra. I have one final question before we go to the next part of the session. And so, being a bioinformatician myself, what I've always found that life scientists they generate lots of data, as you mentioned, and the data set is quite heterogeneous. How do you make them adopt a single standard, especially when it comes to the steep learning curve, when it comes to, like, let's say, SPARQL queries or things like that?
I would actually say not. So you should not adopt to a single. So I'm a really big fan of SPARQL because it gives a bit. I'm getting to a stage that I'm actually. So I get annoyed when people say SPARQL is complex. I agree, SPARQL is complex, but not for a bioinformatician, especially if you see that a bioinformatician uses a lot of APIs. So. And if people who use APIs, believe me, writing SPARQL is a lot easier than having to deal with all the different APIs out there. So it's worth, for a bioinformatician, it's worth investing learning SPARQL. Having said that, I'm not in a position to say everyone should use SPARQL. And in the hands-on, I will show an example. So the only reason to get people on board is to show working examples, because I often compare it with driving. Everybody spends a lot of money to learn how to drive, which, if you look at it from a distance, is just a car with a round thing and 5 sticks. And we spend a lot of money to learn how to drive because it brings us somewhere. I think we need to get to the same point, that people find it worthwhile to learn SPARQL and understand Wikidata by extension.
Right. That's great. So we'll move on to the next part of the session. Andrew will just let us know how to create a Wikidata account, and then we'll go on to the workshop. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this is a bit of a first time for me. So this is a hands-on workshop, and usually when you do this hackathon style of workshop, we're in the same room, and so bear with me if things fail. Tell us in the chat so we can interact. But the idea is, so this is a WikiCite conference. I'm trying to let us play with getting things into Wikidata and reusing it. So in this specific case, what I've done is, the first step is go to a Wikipedia article. I have selected the first page that came on this morning. If you now go to Wikipedia, or when I did an hour ago, if you go to, we can actually check later. This was one of the articles on the main page. I went to the references, which is here. And then we have a set of DOIs. We have this one, and this one, this one, and this one. By the way, before I continue, I assume everybody in this audience is familiar with Scholia. If not, please say so in the chat, and I will give a brief demo of the. Well, I'll do it anyway, but very shortly. We'll see. So we have the DOIs here. So starting with this DOI, Wikidata is a project by the Wikimedia Foundation. So why not try to leverage all the citations that are in Wikipedia? So first, I want to know if it exists. So here is such a SPARQL query, and the links will be put into the Etherpad just shortly, or you can follow the slides that are in the Etherpad already. And when I run this SPARQL query, which tells me I'm interested in an item which has a DOI, which is visible when I put my mouse cursor on top of it, and this is the DOI variable, which uses this value. So now I see that there is a Wikidata item that exists, but for this item, But as you can see, I made that. This is interesting. I made this this morning at 8:07, and at 9:24, another bot got in and enriched the this item with a Dutch label. So what I made this item using the Wikidata integrator, which is a Python library that we use and maintain in the Gene Wiki project. And what I did is it created the item for this article, which I have. Now I need to check. I have here. This is the. I hope it is visible. This is the piece of Python code that I ran. So it's Python code. It imports the Wikidata integrator. It logs in to the user account, and then it feeds the DOI. I'm saying it's a DOI term, and it listens to Crossref. So this is a bit of a caveat here. If you in the following minutes, when we start doing this ourselves, and you follow us, and the DOI does not resolve into a Wikidata item, and it's because that DOI is not covered by Crossref yet. So I see there is a question. How do you display this little by user node below labels and statement to show? Yes, that is a. I wasn't aware. Yeah, I was aware of it. This is where did I do that? So this is a user library that I recently saw in another demonstration, and I added to it. I will try to see if I can find it. It's a user script that you need to implement, that you need to install to your user account, and then you can get these items next to the properties and statements and labels. And where was I? So this morning I run this script, and now I can leverage this. I can run this query, and I get the result that this Wikidata. It is this Wikidata item. We recreated this Wikidata item for that item. With a Wikidata item on this, we can then go to Scholia, and this is Scholia, and this is. I think I've been told there is a demo, so I'm going to take it easy here and refer to the previous demonstration of Wiki, which I understand is online, but. If you follow this address at scholia.toolforge.org and then add the number, this is the item that this is a paper called the Protocol for Adding Knowledge to Wikidata, a case report. And what Scholia does is it leverages it takes in the information, it browses Wikidata, and then present this to you as a presenter. So now that we have this item this item for Wikidata item for this paper, it's that beat. It doesn't add. I'm going to brief stop here because I really thank Magnus for putting in the link to get the user information to your Wikidata page. And then going back, and so we have an item on Wikidata which is exactly the same as that is being presented to us by Crossref. And so now we want to add, but the interesting part of Wikidata is not to replicate, as I told in my talk, to replicate what is in other databases, but to link it and to enrich it. So it already actually happened by someone adding the Dutch label to it. But we can also, which is interesting, start annotating what this paper is about. And we can do so by adding the statement, and we can call it main subject. So it came from Cetiosaurus, this Wikipedia article. So this Wikipedia article has by design a Wikidata item on its own. So we can link this item on that paper to this item of Wikidata about this article. And here you can see it's called Synthiosaurus. This is the Wikipedia article. And we already have other information regarding that Wikipedia article on this Wikidata item. We have a taxon name, we have an image, taxon rank, parent taxon, end time, commons category, and a set of identifiers. So the main topic of that paper is this item. So we can now add it and publish it. And we have enriched this Wikidata. We have enriched this Wikidata item, and we have linked this article in Wikidata with the Wikipedia article and the concept of Synthiosaurus. So now, if we go to Scholia, and let's see if it works. This is all a bit live, so if it doesn't work, don't shoot me. And so the link of the paper, okay, it didn't propagate yet. But me adding the, this is something we need to ask the Scholia developers, me adding the main subject here should have actually made this, this paper to pop up here. So, okay, where are we here? So what have we done? We've started we went to this Wikipedia article, then checked whether it existed, and I then used the bot to do that. So I explained that that SPARQL was needed, and already as a remark, it was made that SPARQL can be intimidating at times, especially, and it has a learning curve. So instead of pushing SPARQL through, you can also use apps, and this is such an app. I've made here the DOI. Let's see if it works. I have made a little app that is available online that has SPARQL underneath, and it takes a bit to render. If anyone has a better way of this rendering, please contact me. I would really like to improve this. And what I can now do is, and this is going to be a bit tricky because the example that I have used has in Wikipedia, so I need to copy the exact DOI as it is being stored. So I have, let me see, resolve. So it's already here. I can log in. And if I do Wikidata, okay, something is going on. I will see what's going on here. But what I was hoping to happen is that we would have the Scholia and the Wikidata page there. I will come back to that later. And so moving forward, but please remember when we continue in a few minutes, you can go back to this website, type in the DOI, get a Wikidata item, and start enriching it with main subjects, etc. So moving forward, and so we've done the annotation of the main subject. Then we're going to the next step. So we have here this article. The bot also added author name strings. And in Wikidata, there are two concepts regarding authors. We have the author name string, but we also have the author as a Wikidata item. And the reason the resolving author name strings to Wikidata items is a really hard problem. You basically cannot do that, you cannot do that automatically to foolproof, to have it foolproof. So in Wikidata, the WikiCite community came up with the concept of the author name string and the author property. Both properties are to capture, but eventually we want to know more about the authors. Not only that their author name string is the author of paper X, but also other papers. So we need a Wikidata item to know thing about the author. So what we can do is, having this created, use a online tool made by one of the Wikidata, awesome Wikidata communities, which is one of the reasons I like Wikidata. People just make tools that work. And now it is searching all the name strings in Wikidata. And yes, all the name strings where you can check if this Paul Upchurch is indeed linked to these papers. And here I'm going to stop doing so because I don't know Paul Upchurch and I'm not familiar with the other papers. But if you know one of the authors, you as a user can go to this page and say and select all the papers that align with this item. So you just go over the group. You can do it for your own papers. You can do it for people in your group, or your coworkers or collaborators. And once you have done, you can create, say, this is a British paleontologist, which seems to be true. So you select it, and then if the person has an ORCID ID, you can take it. And if you do it, all the name strings, all the author name strings will be moved away from the author name strings and put to author to work. And then what we have already did, if we once we have done that information, we can go to Scholia or Wikidata. Oh, we have a bad gateway now. Well, let's try in a minute. And here we have the item. So we have the anatomy of, there is the title, publisher in, it has a list of authors, it has a top scores, which is the only main subject is Cetiosaurus. If we add more topics, main subjects to it, this will extend. I think the timeline doesn't have enough information. So there is still a lot of data missing for this paper, which shows that, which is nice about Scholia, you can now get a paper and enrich it with with other annotations to render and to use. That's it more or less from my part. So I would really like to invite you to go with us. I don't know how, so I'm looking at Arindam. How much do we think we have? Still 50 minutes right now. So we have a few minutes. So it's now everyone who is listening to us. It's your call to we can do one collectively. We can, maybe I should do that. Let me see. So I'm going back to this Wikipedia page, and you can follow. Maybe we should do collectively. Everyone who's listening, try to take this paper, or as far as you like, take any paper, any Wikipedia article or any other DOI, and then we try to add the information in Wikidata and link that to Wikipedia. So for example, let's go with this. I'm taking the second one. First step is check if it is in Wikidata. I think that is incorrect. It is. So then we can go to that Wiki reports and proceedings. It's a scientific article. It is publication in 1887. It came from this Wikipedia article, and which was this ID. And we can now add main subject. So I'm going to do this, but also stop a bit here because this might need curation attention as well, because I am making the assessment that the main subject is Cetiosaurus, because it came from this Wikipedia article. I want to link that paper to this Wikipedia article. So by adding main subjects, Citrosaurus, and publishing, I made this assessment based on the Wikipedia page. But it might not be the main subject. It might be another, it might be just a side note, or so this is up for debate and discussion. But we now have, but by doing this, we now have created a link that can be discussed between between this Wikipedia article and this article. So go to the next, see if we can, I'm trying to find one that does not exist yet. This one, let's try this. Going to, so the little Heroku ad that I demonstrated should do this, but I need to debug a bit and see why it's not responding. We have it here as well. Go to the Wikidata item. So, and where is it? We had it here. Go here on Authors, kind of, then go to main subject, add main subject, and then create a third link to between the main item that responds to the Wikipedia article and the paper that is being cited in the Wikipedia article. Okay, I'm going to pause for maybe 5 minutes and see to see if to let others pick an item from this Wikipedia article, which is, and I will put it in the chat. No, I will put it in the Etherpad. Example. So, and then let's try to maybe at the end of this session have all the papers in the references in there. So it's in the Etherpad, and or if someone else says, no, I have a different DOI that I would really like to go through, just post the DOI in the chat, and I will go through the cycle as we have done for this Wikipedia article. There is a question. I was thinking of structure. I don't understand the question. So you mean that you want to have the references as it is with Structured Commons, where the article, where the comments, the images on comments are being has structured information that can be queried with SPARQL. Okay, I would argue that that's exactly what Wikidata is. So that we would need to agree on, so that we, okay, it doesn't link you post links. YouTube doesn't let you post links. Okay, you can, if you have a DOI, if it's about a DOI, you can post a DOI without the HTTP section. So leave everything out of, so here, let me see if I can get to a DOI. So here we have the, so if you can post it like this. So everything, if I go to, let me see if I can get the link, copy link address. So no, I was too late. So if you remove this part of the HTTP and post only the DOI, I suspect, I can check, that that will. Yes, it's also it will be. No, okay. I take that back. Even without the HTTP DOI, so I think indeed this is the Etherpad is indeed a good way to share DOIs or web addresses. Yes, the references can be queried using SPARQL. If there is, sorry, I didn't see the questions on it. If the references can be queried using SPARQL, this can be an excellent way to enrich Wikidata and Scholia. Yes, maybe I should spend some time on demonstrating that, because it touches on a duplicate way of modeling of Wikidata items. So let's go there to query Wikidata item, and I will take the Wikidata items that we did we have? Yes, this one. So let us take this one, and then go into describe the data. So now we have the items here. But what we want to know, we want to get to the references, and the references takes a bit of knowing of the structure, which is a bit hidden. But if you go to SPARQL and you write select, so this is, and then this is a citation, and we say, and I write P31, and then say citation, I type, and I do values. Oh no, we have values citation. So I have the citation in, and I say now I can run it. So let me check if I get results. So we get citation and the type. I can now write, so I'm just making the query. So I'm adding this label service, which now allows me to not having to leverage the citation label and type label. When I run this, I get this article. It's a scholarly article. Now I want to know who writes this, and I can't, because I'm using what is called a short notation of the property, which is the WDT. But Wikidata also has a P property, which allows us to query the additional properties, the additional qualifiers and references that are annotated with, that are captured in Wikidata. So when I change this WDT into P, and then I need to do, I am calling it a node. You can call this node whatever, but this points to a different node that will be extended into other points. So now I can say node. I can still get the value, I say PSP31, and I can call it type. So now if I run this query, I will get the same results. So it's a scholarly article, but it's a bit different. I can now use the node to get to the references. So if I now say node prof was derived from, and I call this references, and I then say references with P and O. So I have here, I want to have this citation, that has an instance of. I'm expecting it to be of type, and I want to know if this type is referenced. So when I now run this, then I of course should put in the P and the O's that I have added here, and I will get the references stated in, date, etc. So I now have this, and I can use the P and O. And if I now go back to the initial paper, and I need to check, it's 25. Which one did I pick? This one. So we can see that there are 4 references: retrieved, reference URL, DOI, and stated in. If I then go to the results, I have all those references here. So this is a very quick and dirty way of using SPARQL to leverage the references. And I rely a lot on it when I want to distinguish between statements that have references and have not. And maybe I can use that point to be a bit pedantic, because what I've done here is I have put in main subject, but I didn't add a reference. So usually I don't take statements without these references serious, because it doesn't. Anyone can put things, and I have no way of verifying that this paper is indeed about Cetesaurus. And what I can do is I can now add a reference and says stated in English Wikipedia. English Wikipedia. Oh, so you want to have it clear. So I can now put it in, and now I have a reference. And so using this SPARQL query, I can then distinguish between different statements in Wikidata based on the references. And as I said, that's why references in any Wikidata statement, you cannot put enough references to a Wikidata statement. Even if it's for identifiers. So for example, let's go back here, even for a reference, there might be a redundancy here. So the DOI is DOI, and then in this reference, it's stated that the DOI is. So yes, we could argue that we can remove this and yet have crossref. So we don't need it. But now we know that this DOI about this paper came from crossref and not from the original source. Sometimes it's coming from the original source. So even with identifiers, it's really important to put references into Wikidata so users can verify where the information comes from. Oh, I'm not aware of the duplicate reference gadget. I will look into that. Can you put the codes in Etherpad? Which codes, if I may ask? I will put this SPARQL query in the Etherpad. Sorry, I need to report SPARQL. So where were we? See if there is a. Does anyone have a DOI of a paper of your own that we can then link to a topic? So while you're searching for your own DOI, I will pick another DOI from this reference, or maybe just go with, we have covered this, although it would be nice if we can have at least all the DOIs from this paper in there. Let's go. So I took the first link this morning. Let's see if we can find something. Oh yes, Austrian. I'm a big fan of Corvus. So let's go to the Australian Raven. See if we have some papers there. Okay, there is a question. Any weaknesses with DOI? I guess you can say everything has a weakness, but the DOI is a really interesting concept because it resolves. So it allows changes. It's more persistent than, for example, a URL to the original publisher, because publishers sometimes change URL or change addresses. I know that there are projects that use DOI for dataset. I think DataCite is one of those initiatives. And yes, I would like to see that. There are two sides to this question. So yes, you can use the DOI to see where a data set is used. About 8 years ago, I explored this with a project called Cited.in, where we collected citations to databases and not the paper, and then you can actually use to identify relevant data sets. And so yes, I would really say let's use Wikidata now to point to data sets using a DOI. Having said that, the current workflows that I have shown and the apps that have been presented and also in the Wikidata integrator rely on Crossref. And not all the DOIs are currently being covered by Crossref. So for this to work, we need another resolver that resolves a DOI for datasets. We have a DOI. Let's go to the DOI. So let's, okay, can I copy this? Can someone put that in the Etherpad, because I cannot copy from the screen. So maybe let's try to type it. It's there. Fantastic. So let's go to SPARQL. Add it there. Let's see. Okay, it's not in there. So let's see why. Now let's go live on the wild side. So I'm going to add it here. Okay, and now I run the bot. Okay, this doesn't look good. No, it is no URL. So it is either Crossref is out of the air, or let's see, I need to restart, or it is not covered by the Crossref API. Okay. No, so it's not in DOI. This is not actually, this is a nice, we still have enough time. So I want to propose to use this to go through the manual process. And we can do this together. But to show how bots and wrappers around bots can do. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to do Wikidata, doing the full manual process. Not using any bots. I'm going to create a new item. Then I'm taking one article for inspiration, which is this one. I'm moving this to here. And now we have this paper. So we're going to say it losing, and we're going to create the item and say it is a scholarly article. Now I'm going to create I have the empty, so we now have, I'm going to put this in the Etherpad for others to complete it collectively. Where is, I lost the Ether, it's here. So manually added. So yes, it is an open citation dataset. So yes, that would be the we can actually then, if we have a wrapper, but I don't think we have enough time. I can't really make a bot to work in 20 minutes. But if there is a wrapper, or the community builds a wrapper around the open citation dataset, the Wikidata integrator can be easily adapted to leverage the open citation dataset as well. So now let's go back. Where were we? Here. So we have nothing. So now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to say it's an instance of a scholarly article. And now I don't have a reference. I have only the actual reference, which is this. So I can do different things. One of the listeners, Hussein in Turkey, said it's an open citation dataset. If we have verified that it's indeed an open citation dataset, we can say it is stated in the open citation is it corpus or is it dataset? I'm not going to do that because I haven't looked at it, but this is a way to do that. But since we don't have that, the only thing we can do for now is add references and say reference URL. And I'm adding this, so I'm stating that this is a scholarly article based on this URL. And then also add the DOI, since the DOI was used to identify the and I lost Etherpad again, to identify this one. So I have that. So I now have my own statement. So there are other, and why is wrong with this? It says it is not a correct. I probably made a mistake. Yes, I forgot the main number. So I'm going back to here, edit, changing this. So now I have captured that this is the Wikidata item for a scholarly article, and we can start enriching this. And since there are other suggestions in the chat, I'm going to table this for now, but I invite the audience to enrich this. I will push this item to Wikidata. Where are we? And to this for the others too. And then we go back and check. There were others. This is the. I thought there were some. Yes, can the one from such go when? Could someone paste that? Is this one? Yes, that is this one. Oh. Okay, this is BMC medicine, so we can. I clicked it, so we can go back to the. I expect that BMC will be in Crossref, so I'm going to change the DOI. I'm going to run it, and then wait a bit. Let Crossref and Wikidata and the Wikidata integrator does their magic. So while that is happening, I'm going to use the idle time to go back a bit to, yes. Okay, now we have it now. So that DOI exists. Oh, I went immediately to bot making, to bot editing. But what I should have done is I should have taken this copy, add it to the SPARQL query, which I will share in the Etherpad as well. Check it, And it says it doesn't, but why do I get this? So now I need to check because it says it doesn't. So now I check and I will see. So we have that QID and it finds the QID and I'm checking. So the paper is already in for the DOI in Wikidata, but now I don't understand why it is not. Why it's not resolving. It is case sensitive. So let's see if that works. Yes, now we have the item. So again, shows a bit that tweaking of text might be needed. So here we have the specific item. And let's see if so. And so now we can go to Malachan. Let's see if I have the other, this one. So I will go back to so this was one of the authors that was still only covered as author name string. Okay. Okay, so now we have, what was the paper again? It was methods used in spatial analysis of tuberculosis epidemiology. Yes, so we know this. I'm not going to, since I don't know the author nor the paper, I only know because I've confirmed that with the paper, I'm going to leave the rest out. And then say this to you, then do it. And now and this will take a while. We might need to check later because this can be queued. This author will now be available in the author link, and it is possible to browse through Scholia on. No, let's go back to Scholia. Okay, it's all a bit slow. So while it is searching, I'm going back to one statement by Hüseyin Turki. It's about that it is in open citation corpus. So I'm going to make a claim about. So we have said that this is no, where was it? And it was this one, I think. Scholarly article. So we've already made this reference. But it is apparently also available in open citation corpus. I'm not going to check that now. So we might want to verify after the workshop and delete the reference, but I'm trusting the audience here. So I can make a second reference. So I'm saying is that it's the reference, this is the URL and that, but I can also say it's stated in, and then use the open citation corpus. And then add, and then you need to add other identifiers, which I will leave open now for others to because it's a collaborative item for others to enrich. So now publish it, and once we have that, I'm going back to where is here? Yes, I want to have the just made. Where is our paper? Yes, this one. So we want to browse in Scholia. We want to browse this article. And need to check who we did. We did Malanja Karmak. And let's see if no, there are thing is still mentioned as unresolved. Yes, when you use this autoref tool that I've just demonstrated, you might have to wait a bit because sometimes the items are being parked for processing, so it's not actually put into Wikidata, but it will happen. So you might need to check wait a bit. But in the end, if we have that, once the person made it from a string to a thing, an item, we can then also use Scholia to browse through specific authors. So here we have the list of publications for the co-author of that paper. We have number of publications per year, number of pages per year. While we're browsing this, Scholia is using SPARQL queries to render all these visualizations for this author. There's even associated images. Okay, others requests. So I see the RESTful link. Yes, I will look at that at a later stage to see if that can. But it is also creating an open citation corpus link to be used by the Wikidata integrator is a great topic for a hackathon as well. Enable duplicate references. Oh yes, that would be. Although I want to hold back there a bit. So in the pipeline that I have demonstrated so far, I'm using the Wikidata integrator, and this allows large uploads of data. And so if let's assume that the open citation, let's say the open citation corpus materializes. What we don't want to do is have the open citation corpus just being replicated in Wikidata. So yes, I really welcome the enabling of duplicate references in the list of gadgets. I'm going to look into it, but also would like to invite you to be a bit slow on that. Not trying to throw it over the fence into Wikidata so we can use it. What would be also an interesting hackathon topic or community project is to see if we can load the open citation corpus into a Wikibase, because then we would be able to leverage the open citation coverage with federated Wikidata queries, which opens a new section of possibilities. So do we have 10 minutes, Arindam? I think the schedule had some discussions and roundup, right? Or
Yes, we do indeed have some more time to have questions or have a discussion, your views on the whole thing. We can carry on.
so while it's still no, so while I'm waiting for questions, I am going to continue on the. No, we started with the Raven. Where is my Raven page? Here. So let's again start. Pick a reference. So from Wikipedia, this is the genus Corvus. So we're going to see if this is going to repeat the pipeline. So I'm going to continue until there is a question or we are run out of time. So I'm picking this item. It's not in there. But I copied the dot. So it is there. So now we can go to the Wikidata item for that Raven. It's a scholarly article. It's not such a good paper because it lacks, not such a good Wikidata item because it lacks a lot of references. So it's less useful. We can actually enrich this by saying stated in crossref. Well, I need to verify that. So let us check that. Where were we? Yes, it is a correct DOI. No, I haven't verified it in Crossref. So let's go to the bot code and type it in there. Remove the dot and run it. So if once that checks out, I can say, I can verify, where were we with the ravens? I lost my raven. Not that one here. This one. So we can go there. No, we want that one. So we go to the DOI at the end, and at least it has a reference. No, that was the. I forgot, I took the wrong one. I need to go back to here. I had this one. Again, run the query. Go to the page. We had DOI here. And now I can't. I wanted to say that it is stated in. I wanted to have a reference because I have no way of knowing if this is an accurate DOI. So I need to verify. I was hoping it's a return. Yes, it is returned a number, and since it's using the Crossref API, it's safe to say that this is stated in Crossref. And that I checked it today, which is October 28th, 2020. So, and I have made a reference there. So now we have that. It's an orphan item because it has only information about a scholarly article that can be found in any other citation database. So as a WikiCite item, this is sort of a boring item. So now what we need to do is start enriching it and make the main subject. It is the main subject. And again, we came from, not from, was it this one? Australian Raven. So we go to Wikidata item. Where is the Wikidata item? Which is this one. We can go to that, edit, forfeits, and then we can actually add the reference stated in the English Wikipedia. Say it's retrieved on October 28th. It also works using it to, if you just say 20, it doesn't, you can use October in, it does not. Okay, so I have 2020, so I have this. And then we can even enrich it to say reference URL, although this is a bit redundant because we're already pointing it to the main subject, but we can make it explicit. So going, because we're pointing to the Wikidata item, we can go back and say this is the reference URL. But this is up, the last one is, everything I do here is up for discussion and scrutiny and editing. So now we have linked, where is the main subject? We have linked this, there were already other main subjects. It's about Corvus and Australia, but again, no references. So I have no idea if this is correct, if I'm using bots. I have to assume that it's correct, and here I have the other statements. Okay, we have I think 5 minutes left, so there are other questions. So section, there is a question: how can we add a related dataset to a paper within Wikidata, like the dataset that the debater describes on? How can we add a related dataset to a paper? Yes, that's a good question. Actually, it's not that difficult. Well, I don't have an example here. So what you could do is create an item for the dataset. So I have an example here. So one design pattern we used in Gene Wiki in the past is point to a specific edition. So I need to check. I think I have removed them, but let's see if it's still disease ontology. Let me see. Yes. So here, this is one. This is the disease ontology from 2015-406. So you can create a Wikidata item for that dataset, and say this is then say it is an instance of a biological dataset, or what it's a database or a biological database or triple store, anything that it is. Then create the main subject there. Say of which it's an edition, publication is, or put all the metadata about the dataset, and then cite that Wikidata item in your Wikidata item where you want to cite the specific datasets. How reliable is crowdsourcing when it is a critical area like the life sciences? I would say very reliable as long as they provide references. So indeed, if we have seen here this with, so the main point about reusing of data sets, and especially with data sets on Wikidata, is that there should be the means to show where the data is coming from. So yes, you can actually leverage the data and then use bots or queries like we've shown before to say, I don't want everything from Wikidata. I want only that section of Wikidata that follows the following set of references. So short answer is, I think it's very reliable and it's already helpful. And crowdsourcing did also show that crowdsourcing helped to enrich Wikidata to very interesting use cases, of which WikiCite is only one project. Only we need to push on more references so we are able to verify what has been added to Wikidata. Can we use DOI form datasite or instead of creating a new data? I think my short answer is I don't know. So creating a new item, I don't know if there is already a bot or a form that does that, but it's certainly doable. So the moment someone creates a similar, has an API, then you can join the Wikidata integrator on GitHub and suggest. I think there recently has been a specific preprint server being added to the Wikidata integrator to use that. So if there is a Synodo API or a DataCite API, then that is certainly possible. But currently, it has not been implemented yet.
I think we are not getting enough questions right now, but Andra, you can still continue.
How much more time do I have?
You have 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Okay. Okay, then I will leave this for the end. I just wanted to use the opportunity to advertise a workshop that we are giving tomorrow which is a Biocreation online workshop, and the registration is still open. And there we will dive in linking diseases and symptoms. So there will be a lot of redundancy of today, but if you feel interested, please join us there. And we have 4 more minutes, so let me check the Etherpad if there are other suggestions. Otherwise, I take another article from we have the Australian Raven, so we take another DOI. So, but maybe use the opportunity that WikiCite is also about adding Wikipedia articles to Wikidata. So please join me in following this pipeline. Just pick a DOI, and we're going to pick this one. I think then we can go to the SPARQL query and adding the SPARQL the ID, check if it's in Wikidata. It is not. In that case, I'm adding it to my, again, the bot should be more. It is, we have that, so we can now go to main subject. Again, not a lot of references. So we can start fixing this by saying stated in crossref. Wait, yes, because I need to verify this as well. So I'm going, there are different ways to verify, but I'm using the bot now. So we can check, and if we get a QID back, it is covered in Crossref, so then we can add. Well, while that is searching, I am going to put in is the main topic already there? No, it's not. Auto name string. Well, we have auto name string, so we can do main topic, main subject, and then again we had the Australian Raven. I go to the Wikidata item. Go to the Wikidata item, take this one, go back, main subject, add references stated in English Wikipedia, and then add a date, retrieved October 2020, and publish. Then we can check. Yeah, we got it. So we can say that it is stated in Crossref. Again, verified, retrieved, and then October 28th, 2020, publish. And now we had a author here as a name string, being AI Rowley. So we're going back to I Rowley, put it in, look for author. And what did we have? It is an evaluation of predation by crows on young lamb. So we can check if that's in the list. Again, I have not checked, verified this, but I did here, so I can say, yes, that is the case. There was no item, so I'm not going to do that because I'm not involved in the project, but if I would have known the ORCID ID of iRowley, I would have put it here, do it. Then not only will the author item be created, but the author item will also be linked to this specific paper. Again, I'm not doing this now because I'm not familiar with the project, or I need to put more time in it to make that claim. The message is these tools are here to help and to do that, so we don't have to write all the items or SPARQL queries, etc. I think I'm going to leave it at that unless there are other questions.
No, thank you, Andra. That was a nice session we had. As I can see, there aren't any questions as of now, but I do want to ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
Sure. No, I have worked a bit on SPARQL, being a bioinformatician, but I have been worked on it extensively, of course.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying about the whole thing about the Wikidata and WikiCite in general. I was just saying, like, do you have any collaborations with the pharma companies per se, because they are a treasure trove of data, let's say, and there are lots of historical data which can be very useful. So, is there any contacts with them in general?
So there are different contexts with there is different context with pharmaceutical space, because there is also the wiki project pharmaceutical. So in the previous slide, in one of my slides, I showed this chemical node in the knowledge graph that was actually leveraged from a different community in Wikidata that was taking care of that. So yes, there is. I assume there are contacts with the pharmaceutical space and any space out there. But there is another concept that's worth mentioning in here, is that Wikidata is about public data. So it's sometimes also not possible to enrich all the data sets, whether it's from pharma or cultural institutions, because there are proprietary license on top of that. But yes, people are working on Wikidata from very many places.
Right. Exactly. Okay, that's great. And one more thing, like I always found that Wikidata, Gene Wiki in per se, in our case, is driven by computer scientists primarily. There are very few. How do you put it? Wet lab scientists who are involved in the project. So how do you plan on increasing the engagement with wet lab people, wet lab scientists, who are will be the real consumers of this project in a way?
Um, when you talk about wet lab scientist, what would you consider a wet lab scientist?
Like people who are doing the experiments in the, because I what I would assume, like Gene Wiki can be a great resource when I'm a person is a scientist is designing his experiment, for example. uh, because a simple SPARQL query might actually lead him to develop hypothesis based on
Mhm.
like which genes might be overexpressed in an experiment or which proteins might be transcribed, etc. For those kind of things. So I'm basically talking about like molecular biologists, people like that.
So yes, there are two things. The Gene Wiki is not a resource. Gene Wiki is a research project that recognizes Wikidata as a research data knowledge infrastructure, and to use that infrastructure, which is not kindly provided by the Wikimedia Foundation. We develop bots and use research data. So, as a project, I would say the project is more is more aimed at geared at bioinformaticians who write bots, who use the bots, and who indeed model, etc. Having
Okay.
said that, having said that, the question should not be should I don't think the question should be different. Should molecular biologists or wet lab scientists use Wikidata? Yes, I think so. And but that's more aimed. That's more about using Wikidata. And then the question is, how do wet lab scientists use Wikidata? But I cannot answer if that is happening, because one of the toughest thing on Wikidata is we actually don't know who uses Wikidata, which is a problem, because we in our process of trying to get more life science data on Wikidata, a lot of data sets couldn't go to Wikidata because the data is not available with a public license, and a lot of researchers don't want to release the data as public data, because the recognition for is needed to show that the data is being used. So yes, trying to find out who is using Wikidata is a big problem, or is not is a challenge, and so can only be solved if we have different ways of showing who is using the data. Now, one way of doing so is using references. So if you, I mean, there is the license is one thing. This is the legal framework. So when you use CC0 data, it's common to interpret that we cannot use the is that we don't need to reference cite where it's coming from. And I would argue that's the opposite. So by showing that, for example, you use some data and the researcher releases the data as CC0, you can cite the underlying paper or you can cite the data. And by using citations to the data and the literature, we get a better tools at showing that Wikidata makes sense. But now your guess is as good as mine how many I know of some people who are in a wet lab who use Wikidata, but that's just incidental data. We need better ways of showing pointers from Wikidata to the resources so people get engaged more.
Right. Yeah. That's great. Thank you, Andrew. And if we don't have any more questions, I think we can close the session. Do you have any closing comments, Andrew?
No, I would like the opportunity, and please reach out to us on Twitter or on GitHub, and let's have fun on Wikidata and on WikiCite.
So
thank
you so much, Andra. Yeah. So we'll be ending the session here now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.